just going to give everyone just a few seconds to kind of catch up to speed and come on, drop on in. Okay. Greetings, tech art fans from around the world. It's 12:30, and that means it's time for another episode of Tech Art Talk Live. My name is Chris, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. Now, 2 weeks ago, we gave a quick introduction about visual effects. Now, visual effects are something very near and dear to my heart. I was a visual effects artist in Hollywood for about 15 years, and I love visual effects, and I still I have a very fondness for them. And I'm just finishing up my first book called The Real-Time Visual Effects for the Technical Artist, and expect that to see that out by the end of the year. So look out for that. So in celebration of that, I wanted to give a quick Cliff Notes version of kind of an introduction of what can be seen into the book. And what I'm going to be introducing today are the effects rules that you're going to have to deal with when dealing with visual effects. Okay, and so without further ado, let's get rolling as far as these visual effects rules are concerned. All right, now ultimately, I created these rules as a way of giving guidelines to either the artist or the technical artist on what rules to follow in order to rock your careers. And I think that these are kind of general good to follow guidelines that kind of get things going. Now, I don't think that these rules are accidentally, rule in stone. They're not, but they're general kind of rules of thumb. They're not written in stone. They are general guidelines for games or film or cinematics or simulation or whatever is going to pump your gonads. They are not necessarily just for these and not just for real time. They could be for offline as well. So these visual effects rules are built from a long career in history on visual effects. And so they could be used for just about anything. And believe you me, the potentials are expanding exponentially even as we talk. Very exciting business. Okay, the first rule is that visual effects are not the story. All right, what I'm driving forth is the entire industry is evolving towards more of immersive experience. And that means is that visual effects are tools for driving and manipulating motion, mood, and tone. And they complement the story, and visual effects themselves are not the story. They add credibility to the story, they make the believable unbelievable, and they make the impossible real. But they make the world feel as if the world has ever not existed. They create the juice inside of the world that makes it feel like, hey, yeah, this place really does exist. And that's the role of visual effects. And to continue that, visual effects are the glue that kind of bind everything together. They marry characters to environments, and they marry environments back onto the characters. Now, if you take a look at this situation, and now this is the familiar altercation between Gandalf and the Balrog in the Bridge over Khazad-dûm. Yeah, I know, geek stuff here. But, okay, if you look, the Gandalf has got his little light here, and he is casting a light, and it's casting shadows onto the Balrog. Now, the Balrog himself is a firing cataclysm of just lots of bubbling fire, and it's casting fire on Gandalf, and it's creating shadows on Gandalf and onto the shadows of Khazad-dûm and to the bridge itself. And likewise, shadows from Gandalf are being cast off onto the bridge here. And so you see the shadows are being bounced back and forth from CGI elements to live action elements to CG environments. And so the visual effects are the glue that kind of combine everything together. Now, in my humble opinion, the visual effects help the story flow, and the best visual effects are never actually seen. And one of the best examples is from this picture of where this image is from Valerian. And inside of the Valerian, in City of a Thousand Galaxies, there's a scene in here where Ariana is doing a dance scene as a cabaret performer. And it took me a little while because I was so into her performance to realize that, Holy moly. The whole thing is a visual effect. The whole thing was prefabricated. And I didn't realize that until a few minutes into that. That usually takes me, I usually jump onto this stuff immediately. But when the visual effects help the story flow, they never get seen. And that is evidence when the audience gets too wrapped up in the story to notice that, hey, they're participating in visual effects. Those, in my opinion, are the best visual effects. Okay, for all you beginning visual effects artists out there, in my humble opinion, never ever show visual effects out of context. Without context, visual effects are just moving pictures. Okay, and what I mean by context is along the visual effects, you've got to show scale. You got to show lighting, you got to show motion, you got to show weight, and you got to show integration. You can't show this with the visual effects just hanging out by itself. Now, this is an image taken from one of the best demo reels that I've ever seen by Jingguang Huang. Excuse me if I am abusing your name, but believe it, this is one of the best visual effects I have ever seen presented anywhere. And as you can see, it's just this tiny little boat inside of a teacup. And now the teacup and the environment is in just a frozen image. However, inside of that is a boat tossed in a storm while the storm rages above it. Now, if that wasn't beautiful enough, he supplies a breakdown of the individual components that made up the actual elements that went into the visual effect. In my humble opinion, this is the best way of showing your visual effects. Show your visual effect off in the context of which it was designed for. Show it off with its scale, its lighting, its motion, its weight, and its integration. And then if you want to, go ahead and then show off the individual components of this, because he has at least 6 different visual effect types going on here all concurrently at the same time. Great stuff. Okay, when dealing with visual effects, remember, scale is king. All visual effects animate. Whether you like it or not, the visual effect has to move. Okay, weighting is the most important component of animation. Large effects move slowly, and small effects move lively and quickly. Now, if you don't have those scale elements in there, your effects lose credibility. That's just one of the things you do, and that's why one of the reasons why you've got to show your effect inside of the context. So can you animate? Can you actually show your effect in the context of the environment of which it was in? So showing off the scale is super, super duper important. Now, regretfully, this is a warning for all you designers out there who like to repurpose stuff. Yep, you know who you are. Do not scale your visual effects. Avoid giant toys and, okay, you can't see this very well in toy giants. So you can't see this very well. I wish this was a bigger full screen. But as you notice, that what I have here is a giant tower. And it was put in to be about scale size with these 2 other things. And it just doesn't fit. The detail in this is suddenly like hyper really fine. And it makes it look too big. And the bricks in it don't look like bricks at all compared to the bricks that are actually seen in the actual composition itself. So it doesn't fit. That meaning that this is a giant element that's been shrunk down. That's what it looks like. All right, now this element here is a barrel that's been expanded 10 times. Now, if you take a look at this and the textures and the lighting in the world, although it matches the lighting, it doesn't match the texture resolution. It's too blurry. And that's because it was originally composed to be a much smaller thing, a much smaller item. So therefore, it wasn't expected to look like. So your textile composition is incorrect. So therefore, we have a toy giant here. And so this is the reason why VFX don't scale, is because they just don't. You can't get that detail that was intended in order to transcribe through. Okay, now if scale is king, integration is queen. That means how do your visual effects integrate into the scene? Well, first you got to get the correct lighting, that's for sure. And then you got to get all your shadows. That means your visual effects has to cast shadows onto your environment, and your environment has to cast shadow onto your visual effects. Interactive lighting is also really cool. Just like shadows, how your visual effect casts light, and it must be reflected onto your environment. Your environment has got to have an impact and then light your visual effect. Now, this interchange and trade of lighting and shadows is the only way to get your visual effect to actually integrate with your scene properly. Now, whites and blacks. This is not an incitement for racial inequalities. This is all about white levels and black levels into the scene. Now, I shouldn't pick on this too much, but I can't help it. Check out any old-fashioned, this is over here before you were, most of you folks were probably born, any outer space scene, like before 1990, probably around there. Okay, if you go and take any image from a space scene from pre-1990, take it and then blast the gamma on it, meaning like blow out to show what is really there. What you're going to see is a bunch of garbage. Now, there you go. I just happened to take this scene, and then you can see all of this garbage and all this nonsense and all these inaccuracies and all these other the incongruencies. And this all is not visual directly, but indirectly, subconsciously, this comes through. So therefore, what you got to do is take multiple screen captures of your environment. You got to take them into Photoshop or your favorite image viewing app. You got to identify the brightest spot, and we're going to call that the white spot. And then you're going to identify the darkest spot, which is called your black point. And then when rendering your visual effects, you got to make sure that your brightest pixel is not brighter than your white. And likewise, you got to make sure that your darkest pixel is not darker than your black. It's got to fit within that realm, because otherwise what's happening is you're rendering clipping and you're losing information. And so you got to get everything contained within your brightest white and then your darkest black, and then therefore the whole range is going to make sure that all of your rendering range is fully integrated into the scene. Okay, this is so important. Okay, style and consistency. All right, a lot of times, okay, now what you see here is Cool World. Now, I love Cool World, but it is the greatest example of inconsistency that I've ever seen. So here we have good old Brad Pitt in here. Now, Brad Pitt is a live action character. And here we have is an animated Kim Basinger and an animated nutty characters all put together in kind of a cheesy looking scene. This has got about 4 or 5 different styles going on at the same time, and none of it matches. And so what I'm getting at is that a lot of time visual effects like to do things like a 3-dimensional scene, and the animator will, whether they choose to or because that's the only are creating a 2D animated effect. Okay, this is inconsistent. Your visual effects have got a style. They got to match your environment. If they don't match your environment, the audience is going to subconsciously believe that something doesn't quite match, and you want to kind of avoid that. Now, admittedly, Cool World is a lot of fun, very tongue-in-cheek, and it is really a perverse delight for those of you who get into this kind of stuff. However, it is a stylistic wreck, and Ralph Bakshi, he knew what he was doing, but I guess that what kind of makes it so much fun. But for a lot of beginning visual effects artists, you got to avoid this, because this really demonstrates that you don't necessarily know what you're doing, and you're just kind of like, you just don't know how to integrate your effect into the real scene. Okay, visual references. Okay, there's a saying in the industry that no effect is ever done until it's pried from your cold, dead fingers. Now, this is true. You could always add more, you could always take away more, you could always adjust the lighting, you can always just make some minuscule changes. It goes on and on and on. Okay, but realistically, resources are limited, time is limited, your salary is limited, the amount of computational power is limited. So therefore, you have time, money, and quality. Something's got to give. So therefore, okay, also I forgot about that creativity and experience. So sometimes you just may not know. Okay, so if you can just keep on working on a visual effect forever, what's the solution? How do you keep on avoiding working on an effect forever? And the solution to that is creating a visual reference. Now, a visual reference is what I call a minimal viable product. Now, you may have heard that before in your business class. You're going, what the hell is this guy talking about, minimal viable product? Okay, check it out, gang. This is not the film. This is not the game art. This is the game business. And so in order to get things working properly, your producers love this, but you got to establish a minimal viable product. And that is create a line of communication, to share ideas, to collaborate. Any kind of reference is valid. Now, even if you have to draw it yourself, even if you find it from another resource, even your competing resource, Okay, but anyway, this reference image acts as a compass in order to help validate your progress, and it establishes what is needed as a minimal viable product. You say, okay, we'd like to continue working on this. It could be better, CBB, but we got to draw the straw. We got to finish this, and so now it creates a point where everyone can agree and provide a valuable target. So if you don't have a visual reference, guess what, folks? I'm sure you've already started to notice this, but you're going to start to get lost. The image inside of your head does not translate to what is actually happening on the screen when you're creating your visual effects. Create that visual reference. Okay, folks, I can't warn this enough because I've seen so many visual effects artists go about this without creating visual references. You will never get there without your visual reference. It just doesn't work that way. So start using a visual reference. Okay, missing visual effects. Now here's a sad reality that is a hard one to take, but it is so true. No one is ever going to miss a visual effect that isn't there. Okay, unless this visual effect actually takes a break, disappears, pops out of context, is in there for one frame, and then is then there for, it's gone in the next frame. No one's going to ever notice that this visual effects was never there. Okay, now there might be one or two visual effects artists that scratch their chin and they'll go, looks like something more needs to be there. Okay, that rarely happens. Now, it does happen on occasion, but the truth is the audience will never miss an effect that is not there. So, never duplicate a visual effect. Okay, if you take an old effect and you reuse it, okay, people remember. It's uncanny. I don't know where they figure this out, but people do remember. And so all clients want original visual effects. They want you to invent a brand new visual effect every single time. And similarly, don't use canned effects. Okay, now this is kind of a slap on the wrist for all of you folks who love to just hit the one button, instant effects button, and get there. Okay, this gets you 80% of the way there really, really quick. But no client ever wants the canned effect. They want the effect kind of customized. They want it created just for them. They want to feel special. You got to clean up and you got to deliver to your client. This is what they want. This is what they need. Okay. Never take from tutorials. Okay. Okay. If somebody sees your visual effect and it's directly from a tutorial, they're going to recognize it. And this is a small industry. And even though this is a small industry, the chances of the reviewer knowing who actually created that visual effect, or even worse, if they created that tutorial themselves, the opportunity is just too him. So don't do it. Okay. And so the tutorials are an awesome, fantastic place to start. This is where you got to start. But once you own it, once you understand it, once you really understand how it works and behaves, rebuild it, reuse it, turn it into something brand new, turn it into your own. That's the kind of innovation that visual effects companies really like, and this is what they like in their visual effects artists. And on the flip side, never start from scratch either. Okay, start with an existing effect as a placeholder. Just get something in there. And it doesn't matter what it is, it just gets the communication ball flowing. Okay, start with a tutorial or start with anything. But if you don't know how to create the effects, reverse engineer the effect that you did put in there. Dive into it, take it apart, figure out how it works, deviate, customize it, repurpose it, do whatever it takes to change it into something brand new. Make it unrecognizable. Make it your own. And once you've gone and you've transformed this visual effect that you've taken then it will be something that truly belongs to you and in your own. Okay, your VFX toolkit. Visual effects is a wide category, and it can't be learned in one semester, and it can't be learned from a coach either. Now, a coach is going to give you great feedback on your portfolio, and they're going to tell you how well you're doing, and they can give you suggestions on each individual, but they're not going to teach you how to do all of the visual effects in one semester. It's just not possible. Okay, visual effects are a culmination of the entire human experience, and then it's like the culmination of a bunch of humans' experience. So you're kind of combining what other people have learned as well. Okay, so the idea is that you want to learn one visual effect. And then once you learn one, go ahead, then learn another one. And then suddenly you've got two visual effects under your belt. And now you're really starting to play with fire, because now you're taking what you learned from those first visual effects and then you're applying them to what your third visual effect learned, and it just starts cascading upon them. So call upon everything that you know. If you know of a great way of making chocolate chip cookies, I promise you, your technique for making chocolate chip cookies is going to end up either directly or indirectly into the way that you make your visual effects. Awesome stuff here, gang. Keep on learning. Just keep learn, and never stop learning. Never think that you know everything, because hell, I've been doing this for a million years and I'm still learning every single day. Okay, visual effects decomposition. All right. Now, a visual effect should be broken up into smaller visual effects. Most visual effects are not just one little canned effect. It's not just one particle. It's not just one simulation. It's not just one piece of light or a post-process. It's a bunch of things. Okay, so since these effects tend to layer up on top of each other, don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't try to make them all into one single effect. Make them into lots of little baby layers. You know, when you do that, you have infinite control over each minute layer without actually having to threaten or to damage or to corrupt all of your other layers. So keep them unique from each other. And the cool thing about this is that you can keep on adding more and more into this, and it prevents your visual effect from becoming fragile. If you don't use decomposition, if you don't work in layers, and if you're just working with one effect, you're going to end up with one very, very sensitive effect. Okay, they're easy to maintain as well. Okay, very cool. Now, might have heard me say this before, but all visual effects animate. So therefore, thou must become a student of animation. Without animation, your effect is just a pretty picture. Yes, it is. All visual effects move, they animate, or they change. Now, even if it's just something as lighting or a post-process, the change comes from when you see one scene in a particular setting or post-process, and then you see that scene again in another post-process. That means that that lighting, that environment, that post-process has changed over time. And so that really is what helps create the contrast that people understand that what they're looking at is a visual effect. So when becoming a student of motion, remember that visual effects flows from animation. You've got all 12 principles apply to the visual effect. So strive for theme world integration. So that means that your visual effect has to move, has to behave, has to animate just like the world that it's supposed to be in. Don't mix styles. Don't create a 2D animation and mix it in with a 3D world. It's got to move in 3D and it can't move in 2D. Nope. Traditional animation will get you there. So become a student of motion. Okay, become a magician. All right, fake it if you've got to. No one will ever know otherwise. It's a visual effect. Start learning sleight of hand. Redirect. Okay, redirect is where you create one thing that's real bright and shiny over here, but over here you're doing something else and sneaky. Okay, that's redirection. And so that is a really super powerful thing. If you see something bright and shiny inside of the scene and it's distracting your attention, look somewhere else, because something else is going on, I promise you. Okay, distractions are your tools. In fact, one of my former visual effects students said he got into visual effects because he wanted to become a professional liar. That's what he said. And he knew that all of these terms about sleight of hand, redirection, faking it, these are all lies. But this is what becoming a visual effects artist is. Okay. Now, simulation is a very important technique in that. In fact, it's an entire chapter of my whole book. But I got to tell you, folks, they're very useful, and the animations that are created by simulations are the best in the world, because they're used to duplicate the physics of that entire realm. However, they're very boring. They are exactly what you're saying. So, by all means, learn how to simulate. Once you learn how to simulate, you understand it. Okay, get out your Maya, get out Houdini, get out your Blender. Any simulation package will work. Figure out how these simulations will work. And now, in the most recent versions of the real-time engines, Unity and UE4, they also have simulation packages that are active in real time. Take advantage of them, but use them sparingly. And once you do use something, my suggestion is go ahead and turn it to notch 11. Okay, you got it in there. Now turn it up a bit. Now this is kind of a segue into my next section, is that, I forgot about this. Simulations consume careers. Now, this is the problem. Simulations are slow. One of the reasons why they create such good looking animations is because they have to do all of the mathematical, physical computations in order to make that happen. But they will consume your career by waiting around for the effects to compute. So don't let that happen. Okay, you got to start using fast simulations. Okay, fast simulations, however, compromise control and freedom. So what are you going to do? Fast simulations, they don't look good. Okay, slow simulations are too expensive. So what are you going to do? The idea is to start tiny and to build up. Okay, so that means if you're working with a simulation, start rendering tiny thumbnails and images that are really, really dinky and small. If you're using a particle system, start off at 1% or maybe 5%, and then work your way up. If you're dealing with crowds or other kind of flocking simulations, use only 1 or 2 or 3 agents in order to get things going. And if you're working with animation, use low-res polys. Do anything it takes in order to help you iterate faster and faster and faster and get more iterations kind of going. And before a while, you only want to do your full high-resolution final simulation. You want to do it once. And that time is going to be your keeper because everything up to that was just preparation to get that once. And that will help save your career. Okay, hyper reality. This is super important as far as you being a visual effects artist. Tell the story, not the truth. Okay, everyone has a perspective of what reality is. Everyone knows what reality is. Everyone has expectations. However, the story in your mind does not equate to what happens in real life. The brain and the imagination tend to exaggerate and blow things out of proportion and make things larger than life. So therefore, your visual effects can't be duplicating reality. This is one of the reasons why simulations are boring, because they're duplicating reality. All right, make sure that is something special that complements the imagination, complements the story in the mind. Don't actually use reality, use the imagination's reality. What do people imagine? What's the emotional content? What's going on here? Okay, don't show the real image. Appeal to your audience's emotion and play it up. Okay, now dealing with the audience, go ahead and tease them. Okay, show just a little bit. Don't show them everything. You gotta tease them. You gotta entice them. You gotta pull them in. You gotta seduce them. You gotta make them want to become interested into this world. You gotta try to pull them in, but do it slowly. Tease them, coax them, cajole them, make them fill in the gaps with their imagination. Make them curious to see what else has happened. Okay, this is the best situation that I ever had. If you saw the original Jaws, you say, oh yeah, okay, a big old kind of rubber fish. Okay, back when this movie came out, Steven Spielberg is the luckiest guy in the world because he was creating a horror film. And you never saw the monster until 2/3 of the way into the film. Okay, once you saw the monster, well then, whoa, suddenly it was a whole new ball game. But before then, it kept the audience interested and it kept it on edge, and that helped create some of the excitement. It helped entice the emotion of the situation. So take advantage of Steven Spielberg's most valuable lesson. Show them just a little. Don't show them everything. And just tease them. Seduce your audience. Okay, you may have heard me go over this over and over again, but iterate. Your value as a visual effects artist depends exclusively on how many variations you can come up with. How many times can you crank out the thing? I have a rule that in any visual asset that you create in the real-time production has to go into the game at least 5 times. I think it takes at least 5 iterations to get that thing to at least shippable quality. Minimal 5 times. Now, for most assets, it takes longer than that. But as a visual effects artist, you got to really crank out, and your quality as an artist depends on how many times you can crank. So ultimately, more iterations means better visual effects. Okay. Likewise, don't let anything stop you. Because there's going to be times when you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to hit problems, you're going to have visual effects that you don't know how to create, or your visual effects are going to look like poop, and you're like, I don't know, I'm going to have to look up something else. I have to come up with some other technique. Okay, know your limits. Give yourself a certain amount of time. For me, it's about an hour. For other people, it's a half hour. For other people, this is not good. It's 2 days. 2 days is too long. I've seen people go 5 days in a week without seeking for help on a visual effect. That's way too long. Make it something that's short. But once you realize that your time limit has for a particular visual effect has been exceeded and you're still stuck, this is what you got to do. You got to check out the documentation, check out other artists, contact a software manufacturer. They want to help you. They want to make you make their product look great. They have every interest in the world for helping you. Okay, check the forums. TechArt, check out the TechArt Slack, check out techartist.org. Okay, great opportunity. There's visual effects artists on there. There's tech artists there. Lots of folks who are just dying to help you. It's kind of an ego geek thing, But anyway, check out web articles. Toss in proxies if you have to. Once again, this is where the other effect comes in, and you say, okay, well, this is a temporary placeholder, but then this is what this is going to really look like. Or if you have to, you're having a brain fart, time to get out of the constipation, work on another effect, work on something else, and just get your brain out of this mode into a different situation, and so they can return back with a fresh brain and kind of approach the problem from anew. Okay, visual integrity. This is kind of one of my saddest but most important slides. And inconsistent visual effects, they ruin projects. Now, I hate to say this, but so many of my projects that I've worked on have been ruined because the visual effects were inconsistent. Now, what do we mean by visual effects inconsistent? That means that one bad visual effect surrounded by a sea of great visual effects is going to stand out like a sore thumb. People are going to notice that. And what people see when they encounter this, they're going to say, hey, why aren't they delivering? I feel kind of ripped off. How come they kind of how come they cheesed out on this one visual effects when all the other visual effects were great? Okay. People are noticing your visual effects and they're commenting on the quality. That is not what you want. And on the other side, one good effect in a sea of bad effects is going to stand out. The people who are watching this are going to say, hey, why didn't they spend the visual effects budget over the entire project? Why isn't it on everything? Here it is. They blew all their cash wad onto this one visual effect when they could have spread out and made everything look a little bit better. Okay, so the big rule of this, moral of the story, is the audiences will never notice poor visual effects until there are better ones displayed in the same experience. That's the grim reality of it. Audiences don't know what good visual effects are until they see better ones right next to them. If they don't have that contrast, if they don't have that comparison, they will never notice. I don't know, tools to live by. Okay, thank you very much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. It kind of showed off a lot of my passion for visual effects. And so join me for Tech Art Talk Live next Friday. And what we're going to be dealing at, we're going to be lighting and in-camera visual effects, kind of a culmination, not as long as today's lecture, but talking about how to create good lighting and in-camera visual effects. And if you like what you see, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, down over there, over in the thing, and then check out me on YouTube and check out Chris Rhoda on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And otherwise, check out TechArt EDU, also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you really want to help me, go over to the techartedu.com website and sign up for our information. Join up with the crew, and I will try to keep you as informed with all of the progress of what's going on with TechArt EDU as much as I can. Now, I've been negligent lately. I admit the marketing department at TechArt EDU has been a little bit distracted lately, so they haven't done such a good job, but I promise we're going to make better changes into the future. All right. I look forward to having you reach out to me. Let's share some ideas. If you want to know some ideas, or if you want me to talk about a specific topic for Tech Art Talk Live, please contact me. I'll be happy to entertain them. But in the meantime, I will see you all again next Friday for when we're talking about lighting and in-camera visual effects. And until then, sayonara. Bye.